You've probably stormed beaches, led tank battalions, and won impossible battles, but what if almost every war game is teaching you the wrong lessons about war? I'm Teacher Teaches Games, and today we're asking what games can teach us about war and what they get completely wrong. Let's start with the biggest myth. Everyone is a super soldier. In games, real combat accuracy is surprisingly low, despite how they are marketed to us. In trailers of historical war games like Battlefield 1 or Battlefield 5, you feel like you're getting a sense of what true conflict was like nearly 100 years ago. There's explosions, chaos, fire, screaming, or if we look at more modern installments like Call of Duty showing covert operations, gadgets, and quick movement. However, most soldiers spend more time observing, repositioning, and communicating than shooting and blowing stuff up. Games exaggerate individual heroics because they're more fun. They allow for more story-driven content, and they're more engaging for the majority of the gamer demographic. So war isn't about tens of thousands of super soldiers, and the average person could probably tell you that. But what element is it that most games miss? Logistics, the most important part nobody wants to play. Armies run on fuel, food, ammunition, maintenance, and transportation. And many wars are won through logistics rather than tactics. For example, let's look at the Allied supply chains in World War II. The Red Ball Express was a massive truck convoy that supplied the front lines in Europe after the successful invasion of D-Day. This, in combination with the destruction of the Axis supply chains, left opposing armies starved for fuel and resources. This ultimately led to the defeat of the Axis powers. This isn't saying that each individual who fought and died in that conflict was not super. They certainly were heroic in every sense. But it was their collective action, not individual ones, in tandem with superior logistics that proved successful. In the more modern era, we can look to the Persian Gulf War, Operation Desert Storm. The US military, in coordination with other partners, moved millions of tons of equipment and hundreds of thousands of troops overseas before any fighting had actually taken place. This rapid establishment of a logistical hub enabled US forces to outmatch opposing Iraqi forces in just 100 hours, despite the harsh environment. Hard work was done 5 months prior to combat through logistics, not through super soldiers. Now, some games do get into the weeds of logistics and focus less on super soldiers. We'll get into some of those games and rank them a little bit later. But there are other elements to war that games are still missing. War is mostly confusion. First, there's friendly fire. Despite the success that logistics played during Operation Desert Storm, there were still some failures. Official records state that around 17% of US casualties were the result of fratricide, but some studies estimate that up to 24% of combat deaths were caused by friendly forces.
Break blue 6, can you engage with guns? Roger, engaging with guns. Reporting as to maybe friendly vehicles may have been hit over. What? Roger, I was afraid of that. I was really afraid of that. 5 is engaging the target for 30. Ceasefire.
We also have miscommunication and delayed orders. A simple miscommunication or misplaced message can disrupt strategic positioning or delay logistic outcomes, and as we discussed before, logistics can be more influential than tactics. All of this is often referred to as the fog of war. The chaos of battle makes clarity impossible, which leads to friction, disruptions, and misunderstandings from the top of the command chain to the bottom. In games, the fog of war is a little bit harder to replicate. Most games do a really good job at providing the player with lots of information. And when information is given, it is almost always perfect. There isn't as much uncertainty in the information that you've been given. Some games do aim to provide this level of detail, but we haven't encompassed all that war is just yet. Casualties matter more than games suggest. For starters, most games allow you to respawn. In game modes that don't, the game eventually ends, and you get to go back into the fight next match. The weight of a casualty is significantly undervalued. This shouldn't be a hot take, and I think most people can understand this. Casualties being undervalued is at the core of the argument against video games and their theoretical involvement in increases of violence due to desensitization. But that's a topic for another video. What I'm more interested in is how the dilution of casualty in video games makes it hard to replicate the chain reaction of events that result from casualties in war. For example, it's hard to gamify morale collapse. Let's look at the Vietnam War. It wasn't necessarily won or lost because of tactics or superior logistics. Things fell apart because of one-sided swing in morale. The fog of war was ever present in Vietnam, and the US didn't really see an exit ramp. This led to their withdrawal. Now, this didn't necessarily mark the end of the war at large, as the ARVN continued to resist the North Vietnamese. However, the lack of US support did turn the tides in terms of morale. Institutional support for the ARVN weakened, morale bottomed out, and the South Vietnamese Army's cohesion was ultimately shattered, leading to the surrender and the fall of Saigon. I'm not advocating for making casualties more or less influential in games, but it is one of the many aspects that most games get wrong and struggle to replicate. So, which games capture reality the best? Let's start with the least realistic options, the arcade shooters like Call of Duty and Battlefield. Now don't get me wrong, love hopping on COD with the boys every once in a while for some fast-paced shooter action, but that's about all they offer. These games are more about movement tech and physical skill with a controller or a mouse than intellectual skill. These are war games on the surface only. These are your super soldier games. Next up, we have semi-realistic games like Hell Let Loose and Squad. These games do a better job of capturing some of the less action-packed elements. Let's look at Hell Let Loose, for example. It aims to add some of the logistics and miscommunication in war that other games miss. For those that are not familiar with Hell Let Loose, communication seems to be at the forefront. Teams of 50 are divided into squads, similar to other arcade games like Battlefield. However, each squad has a single officer and each team has a single commander. The officer is the only player that can communicate with both the commander and the officers of the other squads. This handful of players have to communicate strategy and logistics on behalf of the entire team. And where there's communication, there's likely to be miscommunication. That being said, games are still somewhat scripted with designated objectives and are designed to conclude in a relatively short time. Finally, we have highly realistic games like Arma. While the base game doesn't prioritize logistics, many players have modded versions of the game that do incorporate this element and provide the most realistic experience. It's the gold standard because of what it gets right: ballistics, physics, resource management, and scale. It has the chain of command structure seen in the previously mentioned semi-realistic games and can have small action-packed moments seen in arcade shooters. However, most engagements are taking place several hundred meters apart, and the majority of the time is spent planning or strategizing and ensuring you have enough resources like fuel and ammunition. All of these metrics are confined within realistic guardrails as well. You don't have an infinitely large backpack to fill. Everything you take with you takes up physical space on your person and influences things like stamina. Just to give you an idea of how realistic Arma is, 60 countries, including the United States, use Arma in their training programs.
Develop soldier skills. Tools such as Virtual Battle Space 3.
Some honorable mentions: Combat Mission and Command Modern Operations. I wanted to focus more on first-person shooters in this particular video, but there are some top-down 2D games that also do a pretty good job at simulating war, only they are from a command position and you're micromanaging logistics, troops, battalions, etc. across an entire military campaign. These fall more under strategy games and can definitely be part of a different discussion. So why do we care? Why are war games popular and what is the psychology behind it? There are 3 primary psychological drivers behind the addictive nature of war games. The first is competence. You can feel yourself improving. Your aim gets better. Your decision-making improves. And as you make mistakes and try new tactics, you get better at the game and you feel good about that. The second driver is uncertainty. Every match creates unpredictable outcomes. While games typically utilize the same maps with similar layouts, the interaction between players creates unique experiences. These unique experiences matter. The brain loves variable reward. Last is power fantasy. Real war is terrifying. Like all games, war games let us step into a world that is foreign to most and removes most of the real-world consequences while preserving excitement. Most of these drivers are key components of mastery, which is something humans crave. War games aren't addictive because they simulate war. They're addictive because they simulate mastery. The closer war games get to reality, the more they reveal a strange truth. War isn't exciting because of the fighting, it's exciting because every decision matters. Those decisions play a crucial role in our growth and learning. None of these games mentioned are free of consequences. It's the minor consequences that we can adapt to that keep us coming back. And with that, I'll leave you with a final question. Would people still play war games if they were just as realistic as actual war? Let me know your thoughts. Thanks for watching.